Hi, I'm Harold Bell, and this is the Legends of Inside Sports and the Way We Were. You know, when a black man from a Northeast housing project has had to face as many obstacles as I have, and despite those obstacles, there have been several poems written about me, making me a legend in my own time instead of a legend in my own mind. I have had my name placed in the congressional record on the floor of Congress by three different politicians and honored at the White House by the President of the United States for my work with inner city children. Despite those obstacles placed in my path, I became the first sports media personality named Washingtonian of the Year by Washingtonian Magazine. I campaigned and got two DC pro athletes inducted into their Hall of Fame after they were blackballed. Willie Wood of the NFL and Earl Lord of the NBA. I became the first student athlete to receive the Clarence Big House Gaines Award for community service. I became a pioneer in radio and television sports talk shows in America by creating the sports talk show format Inside Sports. Today, that format is now copied and used around the world. I watched as my hometown newspaper, the Washington Post, steal my radio tag, Inside Sports, and copyrighted the title and made it their very own. Let us not forget how CBS NFL Films made My Kids in Trouble Community Saturday program the first ever promo to air on national television. The NFL, NBA, National Hockey League, and radio and television outlets around the country have copied my community reach back programs and are now helping kids in trouble in inner cities across America. Seven on Your Side came out of the Inside Sports Talk format. I am the only person on the planet who has broken bread with two of the most controversial personalities in American history, President Richard Nixon and Muhammad Ali. The late Washington Times sports columnist Dick Heller called me the godfather of sports talk, the good kind. Now let me tell you who I really am and where I came from. First, I'm a fourth generation Washingtonian, despite the fact that I was born in Brooklyn, New York, in Kings County Hospital. My great grandfather, Alfred Johnson Tyler, laid the first brick to build Mount Airy Baptist Church located in the shadows of the Capitol on North Capitol Street in Northwest D.C. in 1893. Mount Airy Baptist Church is now a historical landmark. The Tyler House, located 2 blocks north of the church on New York Avenue in North Capitol, is named after my great uncle, the Reverend Earl Tyler. How did I get to Brooklyn, New York? Well, my mother was 6 months pregnant with me here in Washington, D.C. when my deadbeat dad, calling himself a playboy, decided to go to New York. And my mother followed him there. And that's how I was born in Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn, New York. In 1940, we returned to D.C., and my mom found a one-room shack on Douglas Street Northeast. Well, I had a dog named Billy, and I must have been about 3 years old, according to my mother. When she woke up one morning, there was no milk or bread in the house. And she decided to slip out and go and get some milk and bread while I was asleep, or she thought I was asleep. And she left a kerosene lamp burning to keep us warm. Well, when my mother returned from the store, there were fire engines all around the place, and the one-room shack had burned down. I was sitting in the yard crying with my dog standing over me. And the firefighters and my mother was trying to figure out how I got out of the house on my own. Well, nobody was able to figure that out, and my dog Billy was not talking. Well, we went from there to grandma's house, where my older brother was already. Bobby was living with my grandmother. And my mother dropped me off and went to live with her cousins. Well, let me tell you something. Grandma's house was nothing like it, man. Nothing like it. My grandmother, Grandma Bell, and my aunts did not take any prisoners. You hear what I'm saying? Whenever whenever things got bad and we start acting up, man, my aunts will become Charles Bronson like the Death Wish, Arnold Schwarzenegger like the Terminator, and Wesley Snipes like in Blade. Man, my aunts had backhands that would make Venus and Serena jealous. I remember one evening my brother Earl came to the dinner table late. He's supposed to be there at 6 o'clock, right? And my aunt asked him where he'd been. He said something smart under his breath. Boy, she hit him with a backhand that knocked him into the living room. When Earl came back to the table, he was clothed in his right mind. You know, Grandma ran a strict house. I remember I was playing football on this little lot up the street from the house, right? And we knew that when the lights came on, you had to be sitting on that front porch because dinner was going to be served at 6 o'clock, and she wanted you on that front porch and washed up and everything. Well, we were playing in a tied football game, and we decided to try one more play before the lights came on. Well, as that play was being called, the lights came on. My quarterback, whoever it was, told me, Harold, look, run down and go, around that parked car, come back around the post, and I'm gonna hit you with a pass. So sound like one of them Bill Cosby things. And I started running. I spotted my grandmother coming up the street with a switch in her hand. And Buddy, he threw the ball, and I kept running. I tried to get to the house, and I gave my grandmother a fake to the left, and I was going right, and she was standing there. She beat me with that switch all the way to the house. Yeah, I was never late again. When that light came on, I was sitting on that porch. Growing up with grandma, it was fantastic times. We spent 3 to 4 days in church at Mount Airy, and all day Sunday, because my grandmother played the organ. All my uncles and aunts sung in the choir. I mean, they kept the books. I mean, they cooked, you name it. They did. The church was our home. And I remember one thing about church, man. That's where the foundation was laid. And I know, and I kind of understood, man, about family. Family was really first then. And on Sundays and Wednesday, we would go in Surgeon Quarters, which was right next to the church. Tough spot, a tough spot, man. Tough housing project. We would go in there on Sundays and Wednesday and visit the sick and shut in. And my uncle and my grandmother and my aunts and my brothers, we'd go and check on people, and we were like, I mean, we were like celebrities, we had a free pass. Ain't nobody messed with Grandma Bell and Uncle Earl. In fact, the Tyler House, 2 blocks north of the church, a senior citizen residence is named after my great uncle Earl Tyler, the Reverend Earl Tyler. So it's a foundation that was laid, and when my mother got in place, man, that she had graduated from Mendoza High School, so that made her eligible um, to get a housing project if she had a job, and she did get a job with the government accounting office, and we were able to move in a project like I think I must have been about 8 or 9 when she came up to grandma's house and got me and Earl. My grandmother wouldn't let my older brother go. She said, "You can take Earl and Harold, but I'm keeping Bobby." So Bobby, my older brother, was raised by my grandmother, and we went to Parkside, man. And I tell you, it was like being free, man. We were like got out of jail. We had freedom because my mom, she was kind of much more. What's the word? More. She gave us more freedom and more tolerant than my grandmother and aunts were. But the foundation was laid at grandma's house, man. And I remember when my mom came and got us and took us to the housing project called Parkside. And I remember going down there, making that right turn, going down Hayes Street to our home on Kenilworth Terrace. I remember a dirt road, man, that it was a dirt road. Found out that used to be a racetrack over there for horses. And man, that was something else. 715 Kenilworth Terrace, man. My mom, like I said, she got a job as a clerk typist, and she worked the job for 2 years, and she lost her job. It was something had to do with the last hired, the first fired, and those were some difficult times. When she lost that job, we had to go on relief, which is now known as welfare, to make ends meet. And my brother and Earl and I, we were knuckleheads, man. I mean, we were kind of running wild. And I remember one evening, man, we got hungry. There was no food in the house, and Earl and I decided to go to the Safeway, where we used to carry groceries on Saturdays, But during the week, with nobody, you couldn't find nobody to carry their groceries. But we went over there anyway, making like we were going through the store trying to find somebody to carry their groceries. Um, when we would stuff cheese and bologna and stuff in our pockets and our drawers, because we were that hungry. And Earl went out the front door, I went out the back door. So as we walking back down Minnesota Avenue to cross the tracks, it was divided. Parkside was on one side of the housing project, and the other side was like the white community and some blacks. Well, down by the Safeway, it was like mostly whites. And we were walking back home, get ready to cross the tracks, when a police car jumped the curb, man, got in front of us. And cops started calling us all kinds of niggas and get in this car. So we got in the car, and Earl and I were looking at each other. We thought somebody had snitched on us, about taking food that didn't belong to us. Well, as they were going up the siren, going up Benner Road, and took us to the precinct, they snatched us out of the car. But what we had done, we had taken all our food, the cheese and bologna, and hid it up under the seats. So when they snatched us out of the car and carried us into the precinct, we didn't know what was happening. When we got into the precinct, there was this little old lady. She looked up and yelled right away, "Those are not the niggas that snatched my pocketbook." Well, I was never so glad to hear the word nigger in my life than I was that day. Because we were scared as hell. And the cops still kind of harassed us, but there was a brother who had a necktie and a shirt in the precinct. He had a bald head, was dressed real neat, and he told those cops to let us go, man. The lady said that we weren't the ones, so they let us go. As Earl and I get ready to cross the street, we remember that our food was in the back of the car, under the seat. Man, we went back across that street, went into that cop car, and got our food, and went across G-Man Diamond, some woods, take the shortcut home, man. Yeah, that's what it was all about then, man. Um, that I found out who that brother was years later. His name was Detective Golf, and he was a class act, man. Found out later he was a class act, and he looked out for the black community because there were very few black cops on the department at that time, and Detective Golf was the only one I ever only one I ever seen. Now we had another encounter with him later on in a couple of years later when my mother started selling chicken dinners and chitlin dinners on the weekend to make ends meet. And she had played card games, Tonk, where they cut 5 cents on a dollar, where she cut 5 cents on a dollar, sold bootleg liquor. And we were doing real well, man, when my mother started hustling on the weekends. And then she even got a number book. There was a family called the Jacksons on Sheriff Road. Billy Jackson had the number book in the project. And he asked my mother, would she like to take over the number book and would get a percentage? And she said, yeah. So my mother had a number book. She was hustling cards and selling dinners, chicken dinners and chitlin dinner, and we was doing real well. My mother had a big heart, you know. Everybody want to know, you know, why I give things away. My mother was good, boy. If you had any sad story, you needed help, she looked out for you. But you know, with that financial success came a lot of jealousy and envy. And all of a sudden, the police were kicking our door down early in the morning, wee hours in the morning, raiding our house because it was illegal to sell bootleg liquor or had card games where you were cutting money at that time. So my mother, they would carry her out in handcuffs early in the morning. And Earl and I'd be sitting on the steps crying. And my mother would always turn around and say, I'll be back in time to take you boys to make sure that you get to church. She didn't take us. She put us on the streetcar, and we would take that streetcar down to North Capitol Street and walk up to Mount Airy Baptist Church. Church was still in our lives, despite, you know, we had moved away from Grandma Bell's house, but we had church still with us, and that was a good thing. And Grandma Bell was one of a kind, and I'm glad she came into my life. I'm gonna take a break right now. I'm gonna come back with part 2 of Harold Bell. Who is Harold Bell? Stay tuned.